Hi everyone, for today's book review we're going to be checking out The Forgotten Cruiser, HMAS Melbourne, 1913 to 1928. This beautiful book was commissioned and published to commemorate the centenary of the commissioning of HMAS Melbourne. This ship was one of the units that composed the embryonic Royal Australian Navy. It included destroyers such as the Parramatta, the Warrego, the Torrens, and we also had cruisers such as the Melbourne, the Sydney, and a battle cruiser, HMAS Australia. Among the cruisers of that phase of the Australian Navy's history, the Sydney is the more famous one. It was involved in an action against the HMAS Emden and defeated it, giving the Australian Navy its first naval victory. In contrast, the career of HMAS Melbourne wasn't as eventful, hence the title. It did sterling work in the humdrum activity of North Sea sweeps, convoy protection, training cruises for cadets after the war. And while these were all necessary duties, they're not exactly the stuff of naval lore and legend or maritime adventure books. Despite this though, the ship played an important part in establishing the early Australian Navy, and many thousands of crew and officers worked, trained on board. And this book is a loving tribute to the ship and to its career. You can see up here it is profusely illustrated with photos. There are plenty of personal memoirs and reminiscences from men who worked on board, and there's a separate chapter detailing one of the highlights of the career of the Melbourne, where they did a daring rescue as an American schooner, the Helen B. Sterling, was overwhelmed in rough seas, and the crew of the Melbourne were able to rescue all on board. If you want a slice of naval history that is written with memoirs of the crew who were on board, this is a wonderful book. It reads very well. There's a flavor of authenticity because these are the men who actually, served on the ship. And it's a great insight into the ideas, mentalities, and practices of crew from pre-World War I through to that epic conflict, and then into the 20s as the Australian Navy grew and then struggled with finance problems, new threats, and new technologies. And this book covers all of that, ending with the ship's final decommissioning and ultimate scrapping. It's funny, in terms of cities, Sydney and Melbourne often fight each other for reputation and bragging rights. Who has the biggest city? Who's got the highest tourist numbers? Which one is the more desirable to live? Rah, 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 rah. They're always at it. In terms of naval history and names, the HMAS Sydney takes most of the awards, both in the First World War and tragically in the Second World War. However, this book does go some way towards correcting that balance and giving HMAS Melbourne its due, and informing us and reminding us of what it was like to serve as a cruiser during the birth of the Royal Australian Navy, the tough First World War duties, and then onwards through to the interesting but cash-strapped 1920s. So do check it out. For me, this is a four captain's hats, beautifully illustrated, lots of fantastic anecdotes to discover, and just a wonderful insight into a interesting period of time for both cruiser design, naval history, and of course Royal Australian naval history as well. So check it out. HMAS Melbourne, the not so forgotten cruiser anymore.